Let's go watch it in 2D. No, let's go watch it in 3D. But if we watch it in 3D, then is it worth the cost?
Hello, hello, hello. This is Adolph, and I have with me quite a few people. I have with me Miss Christin,
Hi, everyone.
Jake,
Howdy, folks.
and James.
Hello.
And we're all together because we got quite a big topic in this podcast: the box office blues. Now, if you're seeing different publications, they'll talk about how this year has been a really low year, except for Disney and or Marvel. Everything else out there has not made anywhere close to $1 billion, and everything else has made, Disney wise, has made their money basically. And we're just going to talk about it and see why this has happened. Why this year. We have a lot of subtopics in this podcast. So let's just go one by one. James, what are your thoughts? Why do you think this year has been a box office blue year?
Okay, so my major theory on why this has happened is because of the predominance and the focus on foreign markets, especially China. China likes very specific movies. They don't like and I think that a major reason and why American movies that are like action movies or whatever translate really well over to China is I think because it doesn't take a lot to understand them, if that makes sense, in the sense of like, okay, so a movie that's more complex and requires you to understand more about like American society or something, you know what I mean? Like in the sense of with the Avengers or movies like that, the bottom line is just explosions. Like it doesn't take much to understand. And so language-wise, it's the barrier isn't that much. If you know what I mean.
Yeah. Christian, what's your thoughts overall?
I think that maybe one of the reasons that Marvel and Disney are doing so well, and I guess they're one and the same, is because of advertising and budget. I think that they probably are able to better advertise themselves to multiple cultures in a way that might be challenging for smaller studios.
All right, Jake.
Terrible movies, mediocre movies, and rehashes. And going to the movies is so expensive. People are just only willing to take a risk on a movie that they think they're going to like. And Disney has a track record with people, so they gave them their money this summer.
Now, for me, I think a lot of it is just the simple fact that if it's not a big movie, like, a spectacle, I don't care to watch it in the theater. Because I have I don't have a big 4K setup or anything. I have just 1080p. But, I have really fast streaming, and I could just wait like 3 months and watch it on, at home and pause it when I need to go to the bathroom and, talk when I want to talk, and it's just easier. So it's just a multifaceted thing, this topic. It's not, and we're all right, I think. I don't think any one of us are wrong. I think all of us have valid points. James, do you want to add anything to this conversation?
Well, I'd also like to mention, though, I will say this. It's a very specific type of movie. It's mainly Marvel movies that are doing really well. And another interesting thing is that powerhouse franchises like Star Wars are not doing well because they don't appeal to the foreign market.
Now, not all Disney movies have done well. This year's remake of Dumbo is considered a disappointment. That one is the only Disney movie to come out that has not reached $1 billion. The $1 billion or bust kind of method, I think, is just not something that is foreseeable. Like, you just can't predict that to happen every time, and you can't assume that's going to happen. But I mean, Toy Story 4 has made $1 billion. Spider-Man: Far From Home has made $1 billion. The Aladdin and Lion King remakes have made $1 billion. And all the Marvel movies, including Captain Marvel and Endgame and Spider-Man, have made $1 billion. So this $1 billion or bust kind of idea, you think it's something that is just too much to do, Jake?
Yeah, but I think that's where we're headed, because I think Disney's going to look at this, and I think it's already happening with how many projects they've canceled to Fox. Because I mean, I'm sure everybody's heard about the phone call for the shareholders, and they really bashed the box office performance of Dark Phoenix. So I guess we can consider New Mutants as going to Hulu.
Yeah.
So, James, you gave us a story. You gave me a story about that. I think they don't want to put it on Hulu. They, I think.
Yeah. The thing is that they said outright that they're unimpressed by New Mutants. And the thing is too is I honestly think that a lot of that comes from the fact that it's like, is this movie going to appeal, to is it going to make money? Is it going to break $1 billion? If it's not going to break $1 billion, I don't think that they're interested.
Christian, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think that it's a pretty narrow margin where every cinema or every cinematic title that comes out has $1 billion threshold to meet in order to be considered successful. I think that a lot of things that go on in movies is a lot of bloat, and I don't understand why a television show can be made for hundreds of thousands of dollars, whereas a movie has to be made on this budget of like $300 million. When you have a $300 million budget and you have to break $1 billion, it really does narrow down the field of things that can be accepted as potentially successful. Also makes me wonder if it's the end of nerddom, and I mean like of nerds, because if you only have things that are coming out that are only appealing to masses and not appealing to the small niches, then you don't have the geeks out there that are being appeased by television shows or by movies that they might enjoy more than the big box office hits.
Yeah, that's another thing too, where it's if you look at the type of movies that are being made, it's all these very simple movies. And I mean, I don't really have a problem with Marvel movies or anything, but they're not. It doesn't take a lot to understand them.
So, is sequels and reboots and not enough new stuff part of the problem?
Yeah, but it's also the type of movie being made too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Jake, you've mentioned before that this year has gotten a lot of 7s out of us reviewing things, and you think just the quality is not up to snuff, that you don't want to go out to the movie theater for a 6 or a 7 out of 10, right?
Yep, it costs too much.
And the quick. Go ahead.
And I also got to add, I also blame audiences for this too. There are some decent movies. I have seen some good movies this year. Just none of them were 3D, so they weren't, part of this. And a lot of places, when I would talk about them on social media, people were saying, well, this movie's not playing near me. And I'm like, damn, that's a missed opportunity Hollywood had, and the theaters had. Because, I mean, I really enjoyed The Dead Don't Die and The Art of Self-Defense this summer. But most markets didn't get them.
Now, there's a quick turnaround for streaming and for DVD/Blu-ray release. about 3 to 4 months, maybe 5, give or take,
Mhm.
and the thing is, like I said before, I think most people are totally happy just waiting for the Blu-ray or for DVD, for God's sakes. The DVD is still not dead, and it's been out for over 10 years, so almost 20. So it just
Mhm.
people are totally fine just waiting for Redbox or whatever, and 4K HDR is becoming cheap. You can buy a 4K HDR TV for about $500, and most theaters have 4K. So it's like, okay, it's about the same, maybe not that much better to watch it, and you don't really need a big surround sound system anymore. You could get like a $50 sound bar from Walmart, and you're good, good enough. And it's just part of the thing that it's just too many sequels and not enough new stuff, and the smaller stuff, like you said. There's this movie called Peanut Butter Falcon. It's about a mentally incapable man who wants to be a wrestler, and it looks cute.
Mhm.
But I could totally watch that on Netflix. I don't need to go to the theater to see that. It looks like a cute, fun movie. But I don't care. I don't care unless it's a spectacle.
It's interesting that you bring that up. I think I'm older than all of you on this show, and I remember back when movie to DVD wasn't a month or weeks; it was years, sometimes many years. I don't think that Star Wars was released on VHS until like 1981 or 82. So, and to a young audience member, that's an eternity. And I didn't understand why it was taking them so long to release that title on VHS back when that was a thing. And I think that the transfer from cinema to home box office has become so narrow that audiences will just sit around and wait because there's no anxiousness.
Yeah, I can remember when a movie like Jaws would get re-released several times in the theater uh,
Yes,
to promote the sequels. I mean, which Spielberg had nothing to do with, but yeah, Universal just made it a franchise because it made money. This was like the birth of the mess we're in now. And Spielberg didn't have enough power at the time to do anything about it. I wish he had was able to put his foot down and say no, but it is what it is. But the movies used to play in the. Also, movie tickets weren't so damn expensive as to hourly wage,
yeah, that's
and
right.
concessions weren't nearly as expensive. I mean, it's ungodly what it costs for two people to go to the movies.
Yes,
And like the hot dogs are like $7 a pop, where you could get the entire hot dogs, all the condiments, buns at this grocery store for like $4.
Hmm.
So $7 for a hot dog at the theater is just like whatever. You know,
Yeah, $2 popcorn. That's ridiculous.
yeah. So one thing you guys are mentioning that I think is worth mentioning is FOMO, which is a newer, catchy term to say the fear of missing out. Where back in the day, back in the '70s and '80s and '90s, you would fear that you would miss out, and that's why you went to the movies right away. I think that's part of the Marvel, hook, and that you want to talk about Endgame because everyone in the world was going to watch Endgame, or oh, I want to see Lion King remake because I want to see if they messed that up. So you do have that fear of missing out, and it just do you understand what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And you don't have that fear of missing out if it's going to come out in 2 months, and if there's like 5 movies coming out in the same month, and it's just like back to back to back. He's like, all right, I'm tired. I don't. I lost track of which movie is what. So, Christian, what do you feel about FOMO?
yeah, I completely agree with that. That that's the quick the just the brevity between cinema. I'm surprised that cinema doesn't protest about it more, but maybe they're not as powerful as they used to be. And maybe the age of cinema is going to start becoming just a novelty.
Now, James, you mentioned it. China is a big market. Overall, foreign markets are a much bigger deal now than it was. And you're right that you have to make something that is make a movie that is appealable to a foreign market as well as a U.S. market. The more cultural, the more distinct a movie is, the less likely it will make worldwide. Like, I don't think Forrest Gump made 500 million around the world, but it made a whole bunch of money here because that was very cultural. We got that movie. It's an American kind of movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's the thing is that it's only a certain type of movie that's doing well overseas. It's not like all movies are making a lot of money overseas, and it's always like Avengers or something.
I'm curious whether or not foreign filmmakers worry about appealing to American audiences.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting to think.
I know, like English movies, do they have to worry that we're not going to get some of the references, Australian kind of movies? They're still English speaking, but, they're different. They have a different feel to them. Movies from like New Zealand as well, or Canadian movies, just saying, that kind of thing where, we've seen like Wallace and Gromit, the animated movies, they're very English flavored and people like them, but they're not as big as like the Disney, cartoons.
There was a French movie that came out a few years ago. It was shot in real 3D. It's not a conversion, and it is yet to see a U.S. release because it's considered a kids movie, but they drop an F-bomb in it, and the studio with the U.S. rights doesn't want it to have a PG-13 rating, but they don't want to cut it either.
It amazes me, the gatekeepers of these bigwigs that sit around and decide what the masses are going to watch and not watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's just as bad as when the Weinstein brothers were doing it and butchering Hong Kong cinema to the point that I couldn't even stomach their versions that came out in theaters.
It's a very good analogy.
Yeah, are you talking about like censor, basically?
Yeah, and it's also a cultural thing because the French. I mean, this was a French filmmaker trying to appeal to an American audience because they shot the movie in English, and they just couldn't believe that one little thing that woman said would change the rating of the movie. I mean, personally, I think they should have sucked it up and took the PG-13 and just released it.
Yeah.
But then you have the situation with Anchor Bay when they got the rights to the Battle Royale and they were going to show the 3D conversion and then decided against it because of all the gun issues in the U.S. And they're just sitting on it.
It's amazing that's the way the United States culture has just struggled with censorship since the beginning of cinema.
Mm-hmm.
It amazes me when I watch a foreign film just how open and broad they are about these things, about these everyday things that go on in everyday life, and everything has to be homogenized and squeaky clean before it can be released to American audiences.
Yeah, and there's also very specific, like I think that because of the way Hollywood works, it's extraordinarily centralized, in the sense of there's really one major group of people making the movies, and so because of that, you find a lot of similarities. You see what I'm trying to say?
Yes, like music.
Yeah. There's because there's one main music or Hollywood or there's one major industry that makes the movies, and a lot of people share the same directors and actors and things. There's a lot of overlap, and there's a lot of you know what I mean? There's no really competition in the US between different. I mean,
If there were, they'd be stamped out.
Yeah,
exactly.
Especially now, there is no competition. It's completely dominated by Disney, completely. I mean, the only people who are competing against them were Fox?
They're gone.
I think that's so interesting because back in 1979 and 80, Disney was like on the skids. I think that Disney thought they were about to close up forever.
Mm-hmm.
And then they came out with this movie Tron, and they took a chance. God forbid, I guess they didn't learn their lessons on anything, but they took a chance to try to save the studio.
Yeah,
it's and
now they're a movie monopoly.
And they did so by buying other properties.
Yeah, and I guess that's where the real money is.
Absorbing, part of me really doesn't like that. I mean, I know, I understand that, it's completely legal to merge with other companies, but I mean, like, it's to the point where there's no one left.
Yeah.
Practically. Like, Disney has bought, Disney, first Disney bought Pixar, and then they bought Marvel, and then they bought DC, and then, or not DC, okay, that's next. They bought they bought Marvel, and then they bought Star Wars, and then they bought Fox, and now there's like, I heard rumors that they were thinking about buying Sony too, or something crazy like that. I don't know. Like, at this point, it's basically just Disney. They're the only one that exists. It's not like, okay, you could say, oh well, they're the only ones that they make movies that do well. Well, yes, but also they're the only ones that make movies practically.
And you also got to think about the promotions and everything of those films. If you're holding all the cards, you can squash and put out bad press for your competitor.
Yeah. Well, actually, you want to know what is a pretty good example of this was that I'm sort of the belief that Disney, a lot of, like Rotten Tomatoes and the fact that, rarely do their movies get rated down bad. Well, I think that there is definitely kind of a bias towards movies that aren't Disney related. And I think that this happened with Godzilla, the most recent one that came out. I think that, realistically speaking, it wasn't a perfect movie, but it also wasn't bad. And, I think a lot of the low scores came from the fact that it wasn't Disney.
Like almost reverse web optimization.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I honestly think that's kind of the reason why, because I honestly don't see why it's like, the problem with the film is that there's too many there's not enough human-centric story, or I don't know, like it doesn't seem like, anything real.
That's something that's really changed in the past generation. I remember when people used to read movie critics or listen to movie critics on television or radio, and the audience member would always think for themselves and go out and take a chance and say, well, let me see whether I like the movie or not. But nowadays, it seems like reviews are the make and break all.
Yeah.
To see a movie. And I think it's interesting that audiences pay so much attention to critical reviews.
Yeah. It's, one thing that makes me skeptical about, movie critics is that a lot of the time they're bought and paid for by the companies. So,
and maybe we always realized that back then too. So
yeah, I don't know. It's like, they might be right, but also you have to remember that they do have a slant. So,
yeah.
Well, we don't have a slant on our website, and we don't get paid by big corporations to give good reviews to anything.
Yeah.
We may be squashed.
I think this is the time to bring up what Disney did to the LA Times a couple of years ago.
Wait, what'd they
One
do?
of their critics gave a bad review to several Disney movies in a row, and Disney just cut them off from press screenings.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the critics that actually give critical reviews to Disney movies get fired or something.
Oh, I could see that happening now. Because if you lose access to screenings, then it comes out of pocket, and they don't get paid very much. I mean, they get paid better than we do, but still. A lot of them have day jobs.
A puppet to the producers and to the studios in order to stay on board.
Yeah, it's because and the thing is too, I that's just something I've noticed in the sense of like, you look at every Disney movie that's released practically gets really good ratings on Rotten Tomatoes, and I mean, you look at the way, and I'm just saying, like, you look at the way they compare other movies by other studios, and they're a lot harsher.
Right.
I think Disney, they basically buy people.
Sure.
I also wonder how many of these reviewers are actually real, because it seems like every couple of years there's some scandal. We find out some reviewer wasn't a shill. It was just some PR person pretending to be several people writing reviews. And they're just a PR person for the studio.
Yeah. And with algorithms and everything, they could some of those reviews may not have been written by human beings.
Bots. Exactly.
So one thing that's interesting about that I do want to talk about is that whenever you go to buy tickets at like Fandango, Rotten Tomatoes and Fandango are joined. So when you buy the ticket, you get to see the Fandango or the Rotten Tomatoes score before you buy the ticket. So you know right then and there, oh, it's 90%. Oh, I'll watch that. Yeah, let me buy tickets right now. Or if it's 35%, oh no, I'm not going to buy it. And before, those, you had to, specifically look for a movie review, the newspaper article that had, back in the day, the listing of the times and the days of the movies did not also have the reviews next to it. So, you had to look in there and look around. And now, Rotten Tomatoes, you see that score before it comes out, and then now you're like, no, of course not. I was interested in Batman vs. Superman, but now that it's gotten bad reviews, no way I'll watch it, and that's, people don't judge it on their own merit, and I liked Batman vs. Superman. I know what people don't like. I don't think it's great. I liked it, but I don't think it deserved the hate that it got,
Yeah.
But I guess all that'll change once Disney swallows up DC. Suddenly they'll start making great movies.
Well, they have to eat up Warner Brothers first, and I think that might be a big too much to buy out,
Probably have congressional hearings and so forth.
Yeah. I mean, there's been rumors that Warner Brothers is thinking about selling DC. They would probably do what Marvel did in the 80s and 90s, piecemeal it.
Yeah, I've been hearing that too. It's really unfortunate.
Yeah.
So the competition you guys have mentioned is a big thing. Sony did release a new Men in Black movie this year, Men in Black International. And, we all kind of liked it. I mean, some of us liked it a little more than others, but, it didn't get great reviews. And that was something that was competing, and it just didn't do it. It just did not. And Godzilla, King of the Monsters, like James mentioned, that's by Warner Brothers. It just didn't do it. And there's no reason why, either one of those movies, neither one of them are bad. I don't, they have problems, yeah, but I don't think they're, they both should have been successful, but neither one of them have made, $500 million or $1 billion. So it just looks bad,
Disney has problems too. Their last Star Wars film wasn't all that great.
Yeah.
And Dumbo.
Yeah, Dumbo. Yeah.
It's not
like Solo.
Solo, yeah.
I think Solo paid the brunt of the last Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
I didn't think that was a terrible movie either. I kept wondering why.
I thought Solo was fine. It just seemed like I'm a fan of Ron Howard, so it was a Ron Howard movie.
There were certain things that were kind of added into the plot for convenience and so forth that just had to give like some shout out to something else inside the other movies and so forth that were kind of rushed.
And
The
the
movies, the
3D in the
movie.
trailers was awesome, but in the theater I wasn't impressed. That could be presentation, but that's I'm a reviewer. I have to call them as I see them. I can't. Oh, since the trailer looked good.
And I didn't see that movie in 3D.
You didn't miss much.
Yeah.
I wonder if I've ever missed much by not watching a movie in 3D. Maybe that's one reason it's starting to fizzle.
Well, some of them are definitely better. Um, you know,
Absolutely.
it's just hard because you never know what movie theater is going to be good that day. It's not consistent. If you go to the movie theater and the 3D is bad, you don't know if it's bad because the studios made it bad, or if the projector is bad, or if like you go to see a movie in 2D and the lip syncing is bad. Well, that's probably because the movie is not lip synced bad. It's probably bad because the theater didn't know how to mix the audio, which should be pretty basic. So,
One of the things that keeps me out of the movie theater, I know that I'm kind of a movie stay away, but one of the things that drives me crazy is there's two things in life that I don't like. One of them is flashy strobe lights, and the other is loud, obnoxious noise. And I feel like volume and strobe inside of cinema has just gotten so out of hand that I have to wear earplugs and sunglasses from the back row in order to be able to enjoy the plot of the movie.
Huh. Oh, yeah. I hate people who talk in movie theaters. That's why God invented pepper spray.
Excessive, but okay.
Exactly.
So, watching at home is a big thing. I mentioned it before. Has TV basically killed off the movie theater except for the big spectacle?
Perhaps so.
Because it's a cheaper investment.
And we see this right now. We just got announced from Disney for a new property, a new TV show, which we haven't talked about yet, but Obi-Wan, and he's going to have, instead of a movie, which we all wanted, he's going to have a TV show. And is that something that they're like, okay, the Star Wars may not be a huge thing right now, let's do a TV show. But a lot of TV is great. Just truly awesome TV experiences.
It's fresh.
So, I'm not really upset. I don't really care if I'm totally fine watching Obi-Wan on TV instead of on the movie theater.
It might be a better experience.
Yeah, because they'll have more time to develop characters and story and more real estate to work with.
Yeah.
The budget will be less too. Like I said, it amazes me how TV shows can be made for a percentage of, or for a fraction of what movies are made for.
Yeah.
I always ask myself, like, where does all this money go? I mean, how many extras and all these little, water refreshments and everything that everybody that gets paid. I mean, how much can all this stuff cost?
One example of this is like Daredevil. The Daredevil movie is considered a flop and people don't like it that well, but the Daredevil TV show is fantastic.
Maybe it's because they're willing to take more chances and they're able to do more with a smaller budget.
Exactly.
Now, the fear of missing out, 3D could be a way to hook people in, because as much as Jake knows, you can't really buy 3D Blu-rays anymore. It's kind of hard to find some of them, and 3D streaming is kind of hard to do now too. And some movies, like, if you don't see it the first 2 weeks it comes out, you're never going to see it in 3D because after the opening 2 weeks, it's done. So, having great 3D could be a good hook. That could be a reason people go to the theater instead of waiting for home, because you're going to miss out on that experience,
Not if it costs more and if the theater doesn't produce it correctly.
True. Completely true.
Yeah, the dumbest thing Hollywood did is help the theater chains break the projectionist union, because we didn't have these presentation problems when projectionists were bonded and properly trained.
It seems like nothing matters anymore. Everything is so homogenized and unprofessional.
Yeah, and the thing is that it's getting to the point where studios don't even need to try because there's no competition. That's honestly the worst part, is
Yeah.
that the stagnation in the market and the type of movies being made. It's almost as if it doesn't matter what is produced. It's all that's there. You know what I mean?
And
Yeah.
consumers are conditioned to consume whatever they're told to consume. So as
Yeah,
long as
exactly.
things are advertised in a very good way, audiences will
Yeah.
go.
See, the thing is that it's unfortunate, but and usually the explanation people give is like, if you make a quality product, if you work hard, if the writing's good or whatever, if you create something that's high quality, then you'll get a lot of money. But that's not exactly the case anymore, because it's like, why do we have to try so hard if there's no one that we're competing with?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that just makes an inferior whatever. And
Yeah.
and the people who ask for something more are just like, oh, well, we don't need your money because we're already making so much money from other people.
Exactly. In fact, they find us to be an annoyance they wish would go away.
Yeah. It's like, and the thing is too, is like, okay, none of us are really that. We don't really give harsh reviews to Disney movies or anything, but I don't think that, Disney would have fired us for saying this.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They would have. I mean, we're not even like, we're just brushing on the subject, and I honestly think that this is the stuff that gets you banned, because they, what I mean? It's like they don't want any dissent at all. They want none of it. They don't want any people that, like, previously, you would make reviews of movies to try and get people to make better movies, but now it's just they see an attack on their company, and so they just try and silence you. Like, that's what it seems like to me.
Yeah, the suits are running things. It's not even, movies aren't even considered an artistic endeavor anymore.
Yeah,
they're just a product. They're a product.
Yeah, they really, which for for, I think a really good example of, this principle is the fact that it's like, movies are so, it almost seems like they're not even movies. They're like products. You know what I'm trying to say?
It's almost like
exactly.
the next pop hit or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ugly Dolls came out a couple months ago, and that was basically a movie that was a pilot for a TV show coming out soon.
Yeah.
And another example is Wonder Park, which is, again, a TV show or a movie that will eventually become a TV show, apparently. But Wonder Park has gotten through a lot of problems with the development. But it's one of those interesting notes where I thought Wonder Park was completely mediocre. I gave it a 5 out of 10, I think it was. And the 3D was excellent. And it used the D-Box in a really fun way. So maybe, it didn't do that well on box office, but if they would have advertised, excellent 3D, you got to see this in D-Box, maybe that would have made the money back, because D-Box, cost money. And, maybe some of those gimmicks, with 4DX, kind of things could help make the movies going better than just, why not just wait it for at home and watch it on Blu-ray, or Netflix or whatever streaming provider you want to watch.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think these studios decide whether a movie's going to be a flop or a hit before it even hits theaters.
That's actually what I was trying to say earlier with Godzilla. I mean, Godzilla, here's the thing. The problems in Godzilla are not any worse than any of the MCU movies. The reason why it flopped, I don't even think it should be considered a flop. I mean, I know everyone has to break $1 billion to make a profit, but, the reason why they didn't make more money than they did, I honestly think, is because you're like, oh, it's not a Disney movie. So, it has human characters and they don't have a human plot as much. Like that's not an argument.
Well,
You know?
it seemed like Disney had already short fused Solo before. I mean, like within the first weekend, people it almost seemed like they were already throwing their hands up and saying, "Well, that was a flop."
Yeah.
You notice Solo and Phoenix made the news because, I mean, they were stunning flops. I mean, I thought they were both decent movies, but I think they paid the price for franchise fatigue, and I think both of those movies paid the price for their previous movies that pissed off audiences, and they felt burnt and weren't gonna go again.
They didn't want to say that the previous movie was bad, so they could say that like Solo and what was the other one? I haven't seen the other movie.
Dark Phoenix.
Dark Phoenix. Yeah, I need to watch that.
And also, okay, reshoots have been done since the beginning of time, but in this, everybody thinks they're film critic culture. Reshoots have become a shorthand for the movie must be bad, even though that's not true. And and the press, just certain aspects of the press just pile on if a movie gets reshoots, which is why I think Marvel does their damnedest to keep reshoots secret.
Yeah, social media is definitely an interesting thing there where, it was word of mouth before, but now everyone knows, because a lot of websites and a lot of newspapers and whatever will talk, YouTube people will talk about, oh, well, this movie had 10 reshoots. It's a failure. It sucks, and sometimes it's true. Sometimes it's not. And I think some of it too, I think there's a point to where James was saying that, like some of the critics might be paid off, where some of the critics may be highly, I guess, influenced, might be a better way of saying it, to follow the crowd. And if, you do have a different opinion on a movie, you may be shut out. And like, for example, me and Jake, we both actually like Dark Phoenix. It's not a terrible movie, but everyone seems to hate it. And the whole, narrative on social media is it's terrible. Rotten Tomatoes said it's terrible. Don't watch it, don't watch it, don't watch it. And, it flopped. And is it because the movie was terrible, or was it because the social media was against it? Was it because, Rotten Tomatoes was against it? It's all a complicated thing. Was it because people were not happy because it wasn't part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe where, the rest of the comic book movies have done pretty well this year? Other original content, Missing Link was, I think, one of my favorite animated movies this year. And it was a flop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's on the audience. They had great ads. It was a great movie. And the damn sneakers were more successful than the movie.
And, Leica is a small, different, small publisher. They're almost independent at this point. But they have a lot of good word of mouth with different people. And somehow that flopped. And it didn't deserve it. It made only 15 million or 16 million. And it should have made like 50 or 60. And it just flopped. And that's an original movie. There was no predecessor to Missing Link. There's other Bigfoot movies. But, that should have been successful. But it didn't. And it had 3D. And it was an enjoyable movie. So it's just, you never know. That had good reviews too. So why is that a failure but other things not,
Maybe young people are feeling stupid if they go see a movie.
And like Detective Pikachu is an example where, it got okay good reviews and it got pretty good box office, but it didn't really matter because Warner Brothers made a mint with all the toys and all the, stuff tie-ins with that. And that's what ultimately mattered because it definitely is a profitable kind of adventure, and you definitely could make more Detective Pikachu movies because it did so well. So is it because of the quality? No, I think it's a fine movie. It's not terrible. It just didn't do anything for me, but they could make money off of it. So that's...
Yeah. Which, another thing too, that should be mentioned is that the type of movies that are the most profitable are ones where merchandise sales are a factor.
Yeah.
So, Star Wars, Marvel.
Mhm.
I mean, previously Star Wars, Marvel, stuff like that. You know, if you can sell a lot of merchandise connected to the property, then Cars is a good example of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, talk about an abysmal series and all the spin-offs. I mean, I do like the first Cars movie a lot, but yeah,
Okay, but what about what about planes?
it just reminds me. Okay, Tex Avery did some great 7-minute cartoons based on planes. These just look like they just ripped that off and expanded it to 90 minutes to sell toys.
Planes.
I mean, the 3D's nice. The story's predictable. I mean, you can be half asleep and follow it.
That's kind of what I mean.
Exactly. It's harmless. It's painless. It's
There's no.
you want to buy it on disc to babysit your kids.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sort of wondering, like, okay, besides Disney movies, besides, Marvel movies, it's like the only other type of movie that really makes a lot of money is animated movies, and it's for similar reasons. So,
Or Tom Cruise action picture.
yeah, that's true.
I wonder what's going to happen in the future when these franchises start becoming tired to audiences. What happens when there's no Star Wars and there's no other franchises, no more Toy Story, no more, Addams Family. I mean, what happens when audiences get tired of this stuff? I mean, is it going to be the
We're gonna
implosion
get
of
Sharknadoes.
I don't see. Here's the thing, though. On one hand, you could say, "Oh, I think eventually they'll get tired, and then they'll have to make new franchises." Well, yeah, if people, okay, the majority of people, I guess, don't care. I don't think. That's my concern. Like, the majority of people are just, I don't know. They're like goldfish. Like, they don't really care,
Yeah, it could be it.
And that apathy, it's two-sided. It's on one hand, filmmakers don't care about making quality product because the bottom line, the base whatever, is going to make the money, and then the average person doesn't care either. So,
Well, that's why I don't go see movies very often.
yeah. Well,
And I guess some of the sequels and prequels and remakes are just because of familiarity, where you heard of the Lion King, of the Lion King. Oh, they're making another version. Okay, well, I watched it when I was a kid. I'll take my kids to see this version, this remake. Oh, I remember Fast and Furious movies. Yeah, I'll watch Hobbs and Shaw. Yeah, it's just familiar. It's basic, but it doesn't always work. Men in Black International was not a big hit. It didn't deserve to be a flop. And Secret Life of Pets, being an animated movie, was not a big hit either. And it didn't deserve to be a flop. Jake, you reviewed that one. That could have been direct to DVD, and no one would have cared, right?
Yeah, exactly. Heck, if they didn't make it, nobody would have cared.
So it's just it's hard. A lot of people want the remakes and sequels and comic books. It's familiar. You want to you know what it is. You know what to expect. As maybe part of the reason why Disney's being so people at least know basically Disney qualities. It's at least good. And that's at least something. If you're gonna see Aladdin, we were kind of critiquing about it beforehand, but it worked out. It was all right. I liked it. The thing is, it's not going to be completely atrociously bad.
Okay. Yeah, I could buy that.
So it's one of those things that maybe next summer it'll be a big hit. Everything will be huge, and maybe this year wasn't that much, or maybe this is a sign of things coming where people are just totally fine waiting 3 months or 4 months for Blu-ray or 4K disc or streaming, and they don't care unless it's a big spectacle, unless it's something that everyone has to see. I have to see Lion King because I gotta see if that CGI works. I have to see, Fantastic, or not Fantastic, Fast and the Furious. Keep saying that. I don't know why. Fantastic Four, Fast and the Furious, Hobbs and Shaw, because that's such a spectacle. I can't watch that on TV. Godzilla was actually a good thing for that because it was so huge. Literally, everything was huge in that movie.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, it's just one of those things where, you want to see a spectacle, you want to see something big, and you never know if it's this year be bad and next year be good or what.
I think that 3 months and 4 months of a waiting period isn't as long as it used to be. Time used to pass a lot slower in the world before people were having to work 2 and 3 jobs, to make ends meet. And I think that 3 or 4 months shoots by, and that audiences are that it doesn't seem like a very long time for today's audiences because we're so busy now to wait on a movie to come out onto DVD or streaming.
Yeah, and part of the bottom line, they have to have that movie come out for Christmas, so that way people could theoretically buy the Blu-ray for the kids to watch 10 times over, or watch the, digital streaming or whatever. They want to have that, so they make the contracts to be short because they know they have to do it. If they don't get that movie, by Christmas, I'm 100% guaranteed that Lion King is going to come out right before Christmas, Spider-Man Far From Home right before Christmas because they want to get those sales, So
yeah. And something else Jake had said is that movies are so expensive. I think that as people have to work harder and harder for their dollars, they are a lot more careful about what they spend their money on.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons why the theater chains are starting to have movie passes where you pay a monthly fee and you can go see movies.
I think it's interesting the way that so many business models have followed that, these little monthly subscriptions. And I'm curious how many people actually stay on board on those, 2 years, 3 years down the road. My guess is that retention is very low.
And I've also noticed that Disney, you can use your movie club. You can use your Disney rewards cards with your movie passes, so you can earn points for seeing Disney movies with your club, with your movie subscription cards too. Yeah, Disney's really trying to get your money every which way they can.
They want you to pay up front for their movies now.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Now, when we do have original content, we usually get from the studio that brought you X, and then that way for a fact, oh, I know that studio, or from the director of Y, we get this movie, and it kind of undercuts that movie, but it that way you get that hook in. For example, Abominable, that new animated movie coming out September 27th. It has from the studio who brought you How to Train Your Dragon, which is already a established franchise. Oh, okay, I'll watch that. Where if you didn't have that little thing on there, people may not care,
And I guess they have to do that because audiences are so selective. If you're not Disney, then I guess you have to use whatever hook you can to try to bring audiences in.
Yeah, that's been something everybody's used. You should see the trailer for Keyholes Are for Peeping, starring Academy Award winner Farley Granger, or was it nominee? Which is probably to me the app's a softcore porno using an Academy Award nominee's credits for a porno. Ooh.
With that, I think we'll wrap it up. Anything else? Anything final to say?
No, not really.
I absolutely want to end it on Jake's note.
All right.
Okay. Oh, so we're not going to talk about glory holes now.
The water phenomenon, not the sexual thing.
I've just noticed how many movies have glory holes in them this year.
Uh,
Just saying.
all right, bye.
Bye.
Everyone.
All right, before this podcast ends, I want to give a thank you to my patrons. Right now, we have one patron, which is David from Spain, and I want to thank you for your financial support. All right, so that's going to be it for this podcast.
We now have a Patreon, and the link is in the description. Thanks for watching.
And we are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, little bit everywhere. Just look for us 3D or 2D. And of course, review us on iTunes. And if you want to write us a letter, our email address is email3dortwo d@gmail.com. So that's going to be it. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone.